Hey everyone, welcome back to the Minds of Mortgage podcast. This is Kelly Yale, and I am so delighted to be joined today by Dave Savage. And, a lot of people say in the world, like, this person needs no introduction, but with Dave, it's really true. Everyone who I know just loves and respects Dave so much for the impact that he's had on the mortgage industry as a whole. He is the CIO for Trust Engine Mortgage. Are we calling it Trust Engine there, Dave? I'm sorry, I don't mean
No,
to say that.
Trust Engine, which Mortgage Coach is a product of
Exactly.
Trust Engine.
And also the co-founder of First Home IQ. But honestly, what resonates with me even more than that is you give so much to this industry with your whole heart. So I'm so grateful for you for joining today, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I always love our conversations, Kelly, and looking forward to this one.
Yeah, that's great. So I would love just to kind of start at the beginning if you don't mind, because I don't know your story. I don't know how you started in mortgage, and I don't know what led you to create Mortgage Coach to begin with.
Yeah, well, the story has evolved. I mean, I got into mortgage to make a living. I did not do well in school. Like that was never my thing. I am truly ADD and dyslexic. I mean, the whole world's ADD, and not the whole world's dyslexic. So I fell in love with computers and technology early on because of spell check, and fortunately, I took typing in high school, so I could type a lot of words per minute, and so that led me to technology. But when I first got into mortgage, I was working my way through college because my dad was a CPA, went to college. My grandpa was a CPA, went to college. They all got their MBA, and that was what we were all supposed to do. But it was miserable for me. Like I was not doing well. I was on like the 8-year plan, and went to a happy hour. I met Mel Samick. He drove a Mercedes. He was super cool. I think he bought everybody drinks. And I'm like, what does that guy do? He's a mortgage broker. I'm like, what's that? He loans people money. And I'm like, oh. And I was ambitious. Like I wanted to have a house. I wanted to have a car. I had a nice car. And so like, and I knew, I wasn't going to get that help from my family. And so literally I called Mel up after next morning, and I don't know exactly what I said, but it might've been something to the effect that I don't know what you do, but I'll work for free. And I just want to learn from you. I didn't say that, but I had that, vibe, and he hired me. And I think working at Smart and Final at the time, working hard, working graveyard shifts, like really hard work. They gave me like 13 grand a year. And I think my third month of the mortgage business, I made $10,000. And I was like, I found my home. And so that's how I got into mortgage. And really when I founded Mortgage Coach, I had kind of stumbled into this value proposition that my advice makes a difference. Like I would say that in the sales process. And when I founded Mortgage Coach, I was really just, how can technology help me deliver on that promise more effectively, more efficiently? And how could I hire people that have good relationship skills and have them be able to like, hey, my advice makes a difference, and deliver on that promise.
What year was it that you started Mortgage Coach?
So, I mean, the corporate name of Mortgage Coach is called Wow Tools, and so and then I was creating a Wow tool, like literally, and that was really my breakthrough in sales when I learned that if I could just wow people, and I was trying to solve for two wows. Wow, I trust this guy. Wow, this person has my best interest in mind, and they have extraordinary knowledge. Like if I could get someone to think both of those things, they would do business with me. And I had developed this total cost analysis way of doing things. I had become one of the top 50 loan officers in the country, and it was 1986. I first spoke, or 96. Yeah, not 86. Yeah, 96. And I first spoke at Sales Mastery in 95, and Todd Duncan had said, hey, that was good. I'd love to have you back next year. And I was going to have kind of my own little TED Talk presentation. And yeah, I founded Mortgage Coach in 1996, and told my story from stage, and had a I think about 117 people follow me to the back of the stage and pay like $995 for Mortgage Coach. And that was how it all started.
It's just such a great story. It's interesting because you always wonder. I don't know. Maybe you don't wonder. I wonder when people are talking about you. You wonder what they say. You wonder how they describe you to someone else. And I started in 2012, and you were one of the very first people who people would suggest that I meet,
Mm.
because of I think just the way that we sort of viewed the consumer experience and how truly important that was. But I remember the first time I met you, and got to hear you kind of talk, and that was really what resonated with me, is that you represented your brand and your idea in such a kind and open way that people could really understand and really ingest into their business. And so that was one of the super cool things about you. But that when people set you up, or when they say, "Oh, you got to meet Dave Savage," I feel like that's what they say. Here's this really bright guy, had this great idea, and he's really invested in the people that he works with.
Yeah, no, I don't know where I formulated this principle that the more valuable I am, the more successful I will be, and the more I help people achieve their goals beyond what they even think their goals are. I mean, that was part of the Mortgage Coach. Wow, is consumers. I had kind of figured out, because I was good with numbers, that what they think they want the lowest rate and the lowest points and lowest transaction cost, but that doesn't that may not be the right strategy to achieve their real goal, which is, yes, home ownership with financial freedom. And when I kind of figured out that code, that to really help a consumer achieve the real success they want, which is net worth and financial freedom and home ownership. And then, and I learned that early on in my career. I had, a number of different mentors and people that helped me find the path, but that was the code. And then it used to be that there was a small group of us, mortgage planners that really understood that almost cheat code on how to help a consumer. And in those early days, it was just all about conversion. It was like,
Mhm.
I want to be the number one loan officer in the country. I want to have optimize. And I realized that conversion, like how many people did you talk to? How many did a loan with you? Conversion of your database. I've always been very metric driven, goal driven, and really, Mortgage Coach was the best way to optimize conversion, optimize client for lives, and be a very successful mortgage professional.
I love those things, right? One, I love Mortgage Planner because the very second someone said Mortgage Planner to me, I never said loan officer, loan originator ever again. I was like, it's such a brilliant way to look at that. You're not a financial planner. We get that. But to be a mortgage planner means that you take a look at someone's goals and the way that they want to lead their life. And you think about the way that having a home impacts the overall, right? You help them plan for not just this mortgage, but every mortgage they'll have in the future, and how to use those equity strategies to their best advantage. And for me, the minute I understood sort of that's when I learned how to market effectively. Because mortgage planner meant so much to me.
Yeah, no, the two names for Mortgage Coach, it was between Mortgage Coach and Mortgage Planner, and I own the .coms of both of those, mortgageplanner.com and mortgagecoach.com. I picked Coach over Planner,
Yeah.
I took Mortgage Coach to the market, and the thesis on that was, I just, in my life, coaches were always the most valuable people to me. They would help me plan, they would help me make a decision, and then they'd hold me accountable to that decision. And so that was part of the premise of Mortgage Coach, like help people step into tension. Like, planners, they're helping you document it, they're helping you create a path, but they're not necessarily pushing you and holding you accountable and driving you. And so I picked Mortgage Coach, but mortgageplanner.com was almost the name of the company.
That's I like them both, to be fair. I just think Mortgage Coach was brilliantly named. I've said that on multiple occasions because it's just it's a really well branded situation there for sure. When you are when you're looking around right now and you're taking the temperature of the industry as a whole, obviously it's been a tumultuous last year and a half. How do you feel like originators are feeling? Like where do you what temperature do you sort of get from your audience now?
Well, we're in April of 2024 right now, and there is no doubt that top producing mortgage professionals are feeling pretty hopeful. And I think we will likely look back on Q1 of 2024 and say that was the bottom. Now the C-suite is, they've been through 7 consecutive quarters of unprofitability in the mortgage business, and if you're a business owner and you've been through 7 consecutive quarters, whether you were unprofitable as a company or where your peers were unprofitable, no one in mortgage for the past 7 quarters has been thriving. But I think originators are feeling quite hopeful. Like it's spring home buying season, and it feels like spring.
Mhm.
Applications are up, volume is up. The people that I interview for our YouTube channel are jacked. We just did the Modern Mortgage Summit a week ago, and it was a very positive vibe. And yeah, there's a lot of excitement, and I truly believe this is going to be a very pivotal year in housing. Because the NAR settlement, hit a couple of weeks ago, and they're saying July 1st is going to be this reckoning. I can't imagine they're going to pull it off that quick, but this is the year that real estate will shift, and buyer agents will need to get signed agreements. They'll have to negotiate their compensation, and they'll have to do all of that before they even show a home.
Right.
And so it's gonna, and I do think that's a bigger deal for the mortgage industry than some people give it. I mean, I think it's a big deal. It's a sea shift in housing. So hopeful, but a lot of change is happening and is going to happen, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree with you more. I bet we could probably do 2 hours on our philosophy on sort of where it's all going. I think it's so fascinating to see how it's shifting and the ways that we have to shift our thinking in order to sort of, to greet this next stage. And that's why it's so important that any originator right now have these really forward thinking conversations with realtors. If no, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a time where it's more important to have a conversation with your agent than it is currently. Because how you're going to work through these changes and these parts. I mean, obviously, it's going to be smart for the consumer to come to the loan officer first to get pre-approved, and we've always wanted to change that. The way that goes, but now it's really true. We have to figure out, are they going to have the money for this, and then have things been signed and understood from a buyer as to what's going to happen next. And I think that there's something really honestly kind of cool about that level of transparency going in.
Agreed.
Because, I think your general population does not understand how their money is spent when it comes to buying a house. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, and again, that is my mission, to inspire and empower America to make better, sustainable lending decisions, liability decisions, the way America manages the balance sheet. Hey, there's a big industry, and there are millions of advisors that help with the asset side of the balance sheet. Whether it's the stock market, whether it's the insurance industry, like CPAs. But when it comes to liability side of the balance sheet in America, um, it's loan officers that sell mortgages. Here's your rate, here's your payment, here's your cash to close. And there's just a tremendous opportunity for the mortgage industry to elevate, help people select the right liability structure for themselves so that they can achieve homeownership, because most Americans need a mortgage to achieve homeownership unless they came from a wealthy family and they're a trust funder or they hit the lotto. They need a mortgage to get into the homeownership game. But how do you do that in a way that at some point in your life, and the sooner and younger the better, you have a home and you have financial freedom, and there's like, we're light years away from that. Now there are this group of mortgage coaches that are enlightened and they know how to inspire and educate consumers. But that is my goal. Hopefully, in my lifetime, I'll see where everyone, it's commonplace that every time someone gets into debt, what are my options? What is the cost over time? What are some strategies to pay off my debt faster, or build up my equity faster, my assets faster, to where paying off my mortgage is a financial planning decision. Hopefully that'll all change. I'm definitely working hard to make that happen.
Well, that's kind of a great segue, right? You're one of the co-founders of First Home IQ, and it's so important right now because there are I don't even know the stats of how many people want to get into their first house and they feel like it is just such a hurdle considering housing prices and things like that. Why were you passionate about starting that company?
I mean, I've had a really interesting seat on the bus in the mortgage industry. So I've got to see firsthand that when a mortgage professional becomes a mortgage coach, one, they become very successful themselves. And then two, I've seen the stories of where they helped a consumer, go from getting a mortgage to getting what I call financial freedom mortgage, and I've really, my entire adult life has been working from within the industry. It started off as a loan officer. In the early days, I sold mortgage coach to loan officers, and now for as long as I can remember, I've been selling it to to executives and leaders and creating mortgage coach for the bottom up. But it just became very clear that if I'm going to create the kind of social change that I have a mission to change, we got to get to people younger. We got to get to the kids. I think also it's just common sense that in America we do not prepare kids as they go through institutional education to be smart with money. Like financial literacy is almost an afterthought. And so I just when I did achieve financial freedom when I did the mortgage coach. I sold a portion of mortgage coach in December of 2021. I said, you know what, I'm going to invest some time and money in getting to high school and college age kids, in their 20s. Like, let's get more people achieving home ownership in their 20s. And Kristen Messerly is someone that I've had a relationship with for over a decade. She was excited about it. Todd Bookspan has been a good friend of mine now for, God, we've been doing the Friday Mastermind for 7 years. And, him and I got around it. And so we came up with an idea, First Home IQ, and we're pretty pumped about it. So I'm still very focused on my for-profit trust engine. Like, never had more fun with the innovation we're doing within the industry. But I just thought it was important to do something in the nonprofit world and get to kids younger.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. You mentioned Trust Engine and the Borrow Intelligence platform. I am by no means an expert on that. Technically, I would love to be an expert on it. I just want to tell you from me personally, I think it is so brilliant what you're doing there. And that's me just having maybe 25% of an understanding, but I've not been as aligned with anything in my career as I have been in believing in the Borrow Intelligence platform, because so much of that is just my wheelhouse. And so I just wanted to tell you, like, I genuinely could not compliment you more than to say, like, so much of what you're building there, I think, is the future of the
Yeah,
industry.
I'll tell you, I've never been more confident that we're onto something really game changing, and it's just a unique blend. I'm an industry insider. I've grown up in this industry, and mortgage coach is truly an innovative strategy. But then we've been fortunate to bring in some industry outsiders. Rich Harris, who ran the cloud for Oracle, and Rich Labarca, who ran the customer data platform for Microsoft, and they really know how data is being used outside the mortgage space by big pharma, big tech. some of the biggest technology companies in the world. And so to, really bring data together, but do it in a way that optimizes for consumers and optimizes for lenders. I truly believe it's a big deal, and we're excited about it. And I'm
Yeah,
glad you are too.
well, I just couldn't have more respect for those guys. I mean, as you know, like I jokingly tell anyone who'll listen, they're like, "What do where are you going? What do you want to do with your career?" And I say, "I just want to be Rich Labarca's secretary or assistant or like whatever we call that nowadays." Like that, genuinely, like I just love hearing him talk because for me, that's like a mentor. Like for me, that's exactly the kind of language I speak, and I'm really tickled talking to those guys whenever I get the opportunity. So I
Yeah.
just
Well,
wanted to tell you, I think that is just such a great forward thinking platform, and it's really, obviously things as we start evolving as a industry toward more technology, right? You see the trepidation sometimes from people. And I think that's a lot of, computers can't or tech can't replace what a person does. And I don't think that anyone is making the case that it can. But I do think that you see people sort of fearing change. But when I see something like the Borrow Intelligence platform, I think this is the kind of change you can absolutely embrace,
yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, a lot of what makes the Borrow Intelligence platform so kind of unique is that it is really a perfect blend of automation. And let's face it, adoption is, it's the biggest challenge in mortgage tech.
Yeah.
Getting, whether it's the LOS, getting everybody to use the LOS in best of breed ways, whether it's getting people to use their CRM, getting people to use Mortgage Coach, and when we created the Bar Intelligence platform, I mean that was we were solving for two problems. Like one, lenders are sitting on this database, and when you look at conversion, conversion at the point of sale, and conversion from database to loans, like they're losing more loans than they're closing because they don't have optimized conversion processes. And then, they're spending millions on technology, cost per seat that isn't getting used, and so, a lot of what we were trying to solve is like, hey, how can we help through automation, AI, um, drive automation where it makes sense to drive automation and create augmentation between technology and loan officers to drive that. And so I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the industry evolves over the next really not, I was going to say 5-10 years, but I mean over the next 2 years. I think by 2027, there will be some just incredible platforms that have leveraged technology well. Borrow Intelligence platform, Mortgage Coach, that are just slaying it, that are just grabbing market share, and people that don't, I think, I'm not saying they'll go out of business, but they will not be gaining market share. They'll be surviving.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's interesting because I mean, I I sort of helmed a CRM that wasn't really a CRM for a really long time. And what we were able to do when we had that, we used to call it automating the loan officer's best intentions, which meant like if they were doing every single thing that they needed to do every single day to make sure that that relationship became a loan, we were taking on we're shouldering most of that burden for them, and then creating essentially a loan opportunity pipeline, right? Because here we curated the data, here's how we looked at the relationship, here's what we can glean from the data and from the behavior. And I think a lot of that is really well represented too in what you're looking to do as well. We were thinking about it from a CRM perspective and how that consumer would, or the referral partner or the loan officer was going to really work within that technology. I think so often when technology is not deployed well or trained too well, that's where we see it having sort of a floundering time at a mortgage company. But when you tie it all together and then automate what is essentially mundane or is automatable.
I was going to say that whatever's automatable will be automated. Uh,
Yes.
and yeah, no, I was I'm doing a bunch of not a bunch. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do one at Mitch Kiter's office in Washington D.C. next
Mhm.
month, and I'm going to do one here in Orange County. And I was texting back and forth with KP, Kevin
Oh, yeah.
Perenio over at PRMG, and say, hey, what are the top topics right now in the market? And of course, he mentioned NAR settlement,
Mhm.
and he's like, and it's time to really go to the next level with tech. And I do think there is a new level of automation that is coming to the industry that will be much better adopted than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the Wild West still with, I get the balance, don't get me wrong. I get the balance that most, C-suite has when it comes to, really needing to bring in new recruits so they can get that revenue going. But at the same time, our approach to everything is a yes to sales genuinely hurt a lot of bottom lines when it came to technology. And when you own a tech company, the other part of it for us is like, you go in with the best intention, right? There are many people who have excellent intention and helping, but you'll hear, oh well, we spent $5 million on this and it led us nowhere. And you think, I don't know how to change that conversation for people who've been burned so much or who feel so overwhelmed by the tech ask of a company that they seem a little bit burned out. Being able to show them, hey, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. There are ways in which we can do this that won't upset sales and instead will present sales with so much more rich opportunity.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
but I find that conversation sometimes is challenging. Do you?
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that is, one of most mortgage companies' biggest struggles right now. And I actually don't know if they realize what a struggle it is. I've really been loving my interviews with Jim Deitch. The first one we did was called Moneyball Mortgage. But when you really start, putting your loan officers into three tiers, and the tiers are not based on number of loans closed or
Right.
volume, but tier one, profitability per loan. Tier two, usually he says they're making a couple hundred, losing a couple hundred per loan. And then when you look at the tier three, where, these are the loan officers that are losing thousands of dollars per loan. Um, it all comes down to, the tier one loan officers. They are process driven. They are delivering an efficient experience at the point of sale that's profitable. And when you really start, best practice sharing, it's it's not rocket science, And so I do think that is another thing we're going to see more and more lenders, still give loan officers the freedom to be entrepreneurs and how there's a lot of ways to win in the mortgage business. But you've got to be process driven, and you need to leverage technology if you want to have a sustainably profitable mortgage company or be a sustainably profitable loan officer. It's not rocket science, but there's a code. There's a path to doing it.
Almost nothing came as more of a surprise to me in my career in mortgage than, um, you know, I I simply assumed that high sales numbers meant profitability for the company.
Mhm.
And maybe like 5 years ago, someone really started saying like, "Look at this." That's when my bells went off on reporting, right? Because I was like, "Well, how much does it really cost us to buy like, what does a lead actually cost? What is the cost of an actual application? What is the cost per closed loan?" Those are the metrics we have to, as a mortgage company, take a look at because you may think that you're making this much profit on that loan, but if you this is a bond loan and the team worked for 8.5 hours on it and this and you start digging into it and you're like, oh my gosh, we should never have touched this loan as a company. And yet that I just didn't even realize that that was something that just sort of came with the business. And I think we have to look at obviously loan manufacturing, obviously being less of a cost, but there are ways to streamline things that are, I mean, not simple because that makes it seem It's not simple. It's just doable and
Right.
manageable and
Absolutely.
buildable.
Totally agree.
So it's so fascinating. Well, listen, friend, one last question for you, and I mean this with the kind of respect that you just can't imagine. I feel like you have built such a legacy in this industry, right? Not only for being just incredibly approachable, driving community, even within loan officers, even within competitors, that we're all on the same side and doing such good things. But I'm just curious, when you think about the legacy that you want to leave, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, there's definitely some measurables. Uh, coming out of the meltdown, which was a very difficult time in our industry and a very difficult time for Mortgage Coach, I had changed my number one metric from prior to that it was profits, you know, um, conversion, how many members we were adding, what our churn was, but I made the metric, how many families are getting a total cost analysis. Because if someone is getting like options, how those options are going to perform over 3 years, 5 years, and times that matter. And what if you paid an extra $100 a month? How much faster would you pay off your home? Like that was the number one metric. And my goal before I could even measure it, and before we even had 25,000 people getting a mortgage coach every year, was 2 million. Like when 2 million families are getting that experience every year, like I'm creating social change. And I'm going to be a very well taken care of entrepreneur, so kind of purpose and profits. So today, I'm really set at, half of the loans in America are getting that mortgage coach experience. That half of the consumers in America, they're being monitored by Trust Engine, and we're helping predict when they should do a loan. And remember, we're predicting like when should you do a loan to achieve financial freedom. And so, I'm really focused on that. I think by 2027 we'll do that from a for-profit business standpoint, and that would be really, I'd be very happy with that impact in the industry. And then First Home IQ this year, we're trying to get 100,000 consumers taking our little 20-question quiz. That let's just taking these 20 questions will help you be smarter about home ownership. And right now, when Gen Z takes that test, they're getting about a 57% on it. So that's a D. My goal is by 2025, there's over 1 million people taking that quiz, and then it's going to be like millions of Gen Z going to First Home IQ, taking our quiz, and becoming smarter around home ownership. The metric that I want to try to drive is average age of home ownership. I would love to see that get closer, get it into the 20s again. Right now, I mean, different reports say different numbers, but it's over 34. And when I grew up, there was a lot of people getting into home ownership in their 20s. And so I definitely want to drive down home ownership rates, and I want to increase home ownership rates in America, because that to me is the wealth gap in America. It's owning versus renting. When you look at the data, it's just astounding that if we can put people into home ownership as young as possible, uh, America is going to be stronger. America is going to be better. And those are the two metrics that I'm trying to drive. And that's hopefully my legacy is millions of, between high school and 25 getting smarter. And then, 50% of the industry is being optimized through Trust Engine's platform.
It's just awesome. Well, listen, friend, always really grateful for your time and your energy for making homeownership approachable for people and making people be able to understand how they can become a successful home buyer and homeowner long term. So, really appreciate your time and coming on today.
Appreciate you, and congratulations on this podcast. I love that you're doing it. Great job, Kelly. You're always such a wise and process-driven leader in the mortgage industry, and just love what you're doing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, friend. I appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.